The Actor CEO Podcast, episode 110.
If there was no Stanislavski, no Lee Strasberg, there would be no Eric Morris. Those are the foundation on which I built a system. My system is divided into two sections: the instrument, which is the actor, and the craft. What I have discovered is that there's a missing link in the method, and a very serious missing link, and that is the liberation of the actor's instrument.
Going up. You're an actor, but you're also a business. Take control of your career by learning how to manage it like a boss. Be driven, be responsible, be in control. Be an actor CEO. And now, your host, Mike Moreno.
Hello, and welcome back to the Actor CEO Podcast. Thank you for joining me on this journey of learning, exploration, and dedication. If you want to keep getting tips and tricks from industry pros, established actors, and hardworking artists, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. That way, when you're on the go to your next audition, commuting home from work, or at the gym, you can take a moment to listen and get some serious insight into building a better career by becoming an actor CEO. Actors, join our Facebook Ads for Actors, Artists, and Filmmakers group to find out how actors are running Facebook ads to get their work seen, boost their fundraising campaigns, and create enormous turnout at film screenings. And at $20, $30, $40, the ability to reach the right audience and get seen is unbeatable. Find the group on Facebook by searching for Facebook Ads for Actors, Artists, and Filmmakers today. My guest today has been teaching his unique acting system in Los Angeles, New York, and around the world for 53 years. His approach to acting is to teach how not to act and become professional experiencers. He has created over 300 exercises and techniques to liberate the actor. In addition, he has innovated a complete system of craft that addresses and fulfills all the obligations of dramatic material. He has published 9 books on his system, including No Acting Please, Being and Doing, and Freeing the Actor. His books are used in colleges, universities, and acting schools all over the world. His most recent book, A Second Chance at Life, he transforms his proprietary acting method into a therapeutic tool that you can use to free people from crippling emotional obstacles, repair their trauma, and help them enjoy a life of happiness and success. You can find out about his classes at ericmorris.com and find A Second Chance at Life wherever books are sold. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show Eric Morris. Eric, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. And it isn't 53 years. I've been teaching for 60 years. This is my 61st year.
Oh, my goodness. Look at this. 61st year. Congratulations on crossing that threshold. You've helped so many people, and you're just a gift to the acting community. So I'm glad you're still doing it.
Yeah, I'm still functioning. I'm still filled with a lot of energy.
Yeah, no doubt. So right off the bat, Eric, you've developed a system here. You've spent a lot of time working with actors, a lot of time studying yourself, and you've developed a system that is based in sense memory and based in a lot of what came out of the Stanislavski system, but then you've taken it to a whole nother level. You've put a lot of your own experience and insight into it, and started bringing actors to what you call a being state that you'd like to get to with actors.
It's like starting with an empty blackboard that you can write anything on.
Yeah, 100%. And it really has shifted, and a lot of people have said this, certainly a higher profile, and of course anybody who's worked with you, really has shifted how people approach their work. And I'm interested in terms of, let's say, someone who is just starting their work with you or maybe new to their journey as an actor, what are some of the most common challenges you see that you would like to address with them, and then perhaps how you go about doing that?
Okay. Well, I believe that the missing link, and first of all, let me go back to Stanislavski. I was influenced. That's the basis for the foundation of what I started and have been doing for all this time. I was influenced by Lee Strasberg, but I've gone kind of galaxies beyond the original precepts. But I say that if there was no Stanislavski, no Lee Strasberg, there would be no Eric Morris. Those are the foundation on which I built a system. Right. My system is divided into two sections: the instrument, which is the actor, and the craft. And what I have discovered very early in my pursuit of teaching and working with people is that there's a missing link in the method, and a very serious missing link. And that is the liberation of the actor's instrument. People come to me with problems, blocks, emotional inabilities. They have superstitions. They have dependencies. They're impositional. They redirect what they really feel into a conceptual behavior. So what I've been doing is a lot of instrumental work. My work is divided in class and in my life, in my books, between the instrument and the craft. That makes the full circle of my work. Mm-hmm. The instrument is you, the actor. And my instrumental exercises, which I call instrumental therapy exercises, are designed to liberate the actor so that they are free to be an experiential actor, getting rid of problems, fears, dependencies, emotional blocks, social obligations, behavioral dependencies that get in the way of being free to act. So a large part of what I've done and what I do is to free the person of these obstacles so that they are free to do the craft. Now, the craft is the process by which you address and fulfill material, dramatic material. You know, whether it's a play, a film, television show. It's the medium is secondary to the process. In other words, the medium, the process is adjustable to the medium. But that's why I divide my classes and my time between instrumental liberation and craft. And so I've been doing that for mostly the biggest part of my teaching years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to answer your question.
Yes, please.
When a person first starts working with me, I ask them to introduce themselves.
Sure.
Over the years of teaching, I've developed a pretty kind of laser-like perception. If I watch an actor introduce himself for maybe 7, 8, 10 minutes, I pick up a lot on where his tension is, his fear, his insecurities. Just let them talk and they'll tell you everything, you know. And because I'm trained for so many years on how to pick up on these things, first exercises are wonderful because I get a really good hit and perception on where I have to work to start the journey with the actor in liberating that person, he or she, so that we can get rid of, alleviate, eliminate obstacles, problems, dependencies, social obligation, tension, fear, insecurities. And one of the biggest problems that actors have, and people have, but actors are people, is self-esteem, self-worth, ego, entitlement. Right. I would say that 90%, well, maybe 85%, of all problems that actors bring into my classes from the beginning on is their lack of self-esteem, self-worth, and entitlement. And what they do to deal with the insecurities that they hide behind these things is they redirect their behavior into a kind of impositional confidence or impositional state of being where they're more secure. But I see right through that, and they aren't. And we have to address immediately the self-esteem issues, the obstacles, blocks, the social obligations, wanting to be liked, wanting to be loved. And most people, you know, they start with a lot of insecurities. Some of them were riddled with insecurities. And I find, interestingly enough, Mike, I find the people who are the most basically talented have the most problems, you know?
Yeah. That assessment makes sense.
I think it's because they're so sensitive and affectable that they develop all these fears and these insecurities. But underneath that, when we cut through that, we antidote and eliminate that stuff, their talent comes through like gangbusters, you know?
Wow.
So a lot of people not dealing with those problems never really get to the point where they can really enjoy their talent. And because of that, some of them who potentially could be fantastic actors never go the distance because they can't break through the problems, the obstacles, the instrumental issues, the insecurities, the lack of self-esteem, which I deal with all of these things.
Sure.
And if a person stays on the journey long enough, we antidote them all. I've dealt with I've dealt with people who were absolutely frozen on stage, inaudible, tension so great that their shoulders were at their earlobes, and it would take 5 minutes for them to be able to tell me their names. And 6 months, a year, or 2 years later, they were functioning and good actors.
Right.
It's amazing what this work is. It's life altering and it's life changing. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to having taken the journey myself, and evolved into a place where I can do this for people. That's why I wrote this. My latest book is for everybody, not just it is for actors, but it's for everybody else in the world. And somebody suggested I write a book that would deal with people who are not actors, to liberate them and allow them to repair the damage.
Head to actorceo.com/blog to read posts on how actors can save and make more money, the best self-tape gear under $20, how actors can grow their Instagram profile, and exclusive interviews. actorceo.com/blog keeps getting more and more tips, tricks, and resources, so check it out today. Eric, in your new book, Second Chance at Life, you're aiming to help people repair trauma and enjoy a life of happiness and success.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is it about your work with actors that becomes a therapeutic tool for other people?
Well, actually, this particular approach, I have 3 or 4 approaches in my book, Second Chance at Life. Mm-hmm. One of them is the identification of seriously damaging experiences, remembering them, recalling them, and then audibly or inaudibly, but audibly preferably, to actually go through the experience, changing the ingredients and the outcome to a positive outcome and a positive ingredients of the original experience, and changing it. Mm-hmm. It's like believability, what you do. But by repetition, what is happening if you repeat it many, 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 many times, each time you repeat it, it's like telling a lie over and over and over again. But it's not a lie, really. You start believing the very thing that you're changing the ingredients of a really damaging experience and the outcome. And what you're doing is you're reprogramming the unconscious memory banks that is housing those damaging experiences. According to C.G. Jung, who did the most work with the unconscious, he was a Swiss psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. He did the most work and knew more about the unconscious than Freud did. And they were collaborators, and they used to argue about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But the unconscious is not analytical. Mm-hmm. It doesn't analyze, it doesn't think about it, it changes nothing. All it does is it stores. It's a huge storehouse of experiences. So these impacting, hurtful experiences find their way into the unconscious memory banks, and they liberate themselves subliminally into your consciousness, and they block you from being happy. They haunt you. They minimize your security, depending on the nature of each experience, of course. Sure. So doing that using the verbal approach, there's also an imaging approach. I wrote a whole book on imaging, which is called Acting, Imaging, and the Unconscious. It's a 250-page book on imaging and how to do that. So you can image it, you can talk about it, it could be a verbal approach, it could be a sensorial approach, it could be an imaging approach. And actually, Mike, it works. It works. I've worked with it myself on me. I worked with it with other people. It works. So that's one of the techniques. The other technique is called second chance encounters, which I use in my acting classes as a choice and a way to deal with the issues that come up in our life. Now, second chance encounters is doing an imaginary monologue to people who have been in your life that you wish you could have stood up to, or told them you loved them, or straightened out a misunderstanding. Sure. And the fact that they're not in your life anymore, whether living or dead, it haunts you that these things are painfully in your consciousness, and they're not resolved. There was no closure. So second chance encounters allows you to pick out all of these experiences with people and allow you to find closure by talking to them and doing the things, saying the things, behaving the way you wish you had in the beginning, in the original experience. Now, the third part of the book is called retrospective objectivity. This is a very, very important thing. And I had a life-changing experience with it myself. Mm-hmm. So this isn't just theory or concept. This stuff works, and I've been using it also in myself. What it is, we get comfortable in our lives with our self-image. And self-image is what we accept. That's who I am. Yeah, somebody says, well, you know, you're a little bit stubborn, or whatever somebody might say to you. And say, sure. yeah, I know, that's who I am. But what happens is we get so solidly ensconced in the image that we don't really allow for other things that have occurred and happened or we have accomplished in our life. We don't challenge that image, and we don't identify it as an incomplete image or a false self or a false image. Once we start examining and challenging the image, whether it's incomplete, by looking at our life in terms of our evolution, consciousness, and awareness, and actual physical, emotional, commercial successes, and we look at the things that are not really related to that self-image, the image begins to stretch. It begins to become a much more authentic image, an authentic self. So that retrospective objectivity is really examining your self-image as you accept it by looking at all of the things in life that you have grown, evolved, your consciousness, your relationships, your successes, the things that people have brought to your life and say about you. And by doing those things objectively, you really change that self-image. It becomes a real self, a much more broad and dimensional self, and it allows you to accomplish things that you have not been able to accomplish because your false self-image or your incomplete self-image has kept you from doing that.
Right.
So these techniques actually work. I had an epiphany 6 or 7 years ago with retrospective objectivity, and it opened a whole new corridor in my life. At 81 years old, my life changed. It was inevitable that I was living all of these years with a self-image that was okay, but it lacked so much. Yeah. And objectifying and adding to the image things that I had neglected to become conscious of or use, it broadened the image and freed me in a way that is it's almost unrelatable. It was so mind and being life altering, life changing. And so that was my own personal experience with retrospective objectivity. And so the book is really out there to help people and to help them to have a happy life. You know, the two things that we have to accomplish, Mike, in our life is to elevate our consciousness to the highest level and achieve happiness.
Sure.
I mean, everything else is secondary, really. Health, consciousness, and happiness. Those are the goals of life, I believe. And everything else is important, but secondary to that, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, I certainly commend you for taking your experience and your message into the broader world, you know, outside of the creative world, if you will. But something we talk about on this podcast all the time, which I think really ties into the message you're bridging here, or the two communities you're bridging, the creative community and, you know, everyone else, if you will. But, you know, actors, I try to reinforce, it's called the Actor CEO podcast because actors are their own business. They are this entity. They are entrepreneurs. They are these creative individuals that are running their own creative lives and get to have control over that. But what I think is so interesting, and I see this a lot now, being somebody who is running a business, being somebody who is a creative individual, and talking to many others who are doing the same, is that the business world, like let's say the self-help in the business world, starts to preach many of the same messages that you just spoke about. So everybody, as you say, everybody is trying to achieve the same goals. And with acting, there's sort of a unique perspective that we almost tackle those issues, or certainly you try to. You tackle those issues first. Whereas in the business world, people can get very far before they start to hit those points of, wait, have I been telling myself a story that is perhaps untrue, filled with some falsehoods, narrowing, confining, and really isn't about expanding into what I can truly fully be, and therefore once they take that step, they become a better leader, they become a better business person, they become a more savvy entrepreneur, whatever it might be. There's a lot of that information out there right now. If you're in the entrepreneurial market, certainly, if you're in the business world, you can get inundated with some of this messaging of self-improvement, if you will. But I think it's so fascinating that you certainly have been a leader in this in the creative world, but that those two conversations are now merging. And I see a lot of this happening. The creative market and the business market are becoming closer and closer entwined. Then I think, then certainly other times in history. I think it's a unique time to live in.
We've come a long way in the last 100 years, even in the last 100 years. Well, I have not lost the sight on the fact that acting and directing and writing about it and teaching it is my life. That's my whole life. So this branching out into this area, reaching out to people who are not actors, is kind of an addenda to everything else I do. I still teach 3 classes a week.
Sure.
My next book is called The Actor's Other Selves. I've outlined it. It's about using subpersonalities as a major acting tool. And if I'm healthy and live long enough, I'm going to write another book called The Actor Journalizes, meaning the 5 or 6 journals an actor should keep. Yeah. So I'm still very focused on acting and elevating the actor's craft and the liberation of the instrument. And I also work with a lot of working actors. My wife Skypes with people all over the world doing films and television, and she's incredible. She works one-on-one with actors, and she's mostly people who are working successfully on series and in films. So we're very active in working with a lot of professional people who are very successful.
Right, absolutely.
And so I'm very happy with my career. I call it a career because it is,
Yeah, absolutely. And you should be. And we're all certainly thankful that it's blossomed in the way that it has and continues to do so. I would love, Eric, to dive in, actually, talking about, some of the people that you've worked with, and more importantly, the tools, as you mentioned. You've, of course, had the chance to work with actors like Johnny Depp, Jack Nicholson, the list could go on and on, Sally Kirkland, just to name a few, right? But
no, I never worked with Sally. I know Sally. Sally's a good friend.
Okay, there you go.
I never worked. But Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think I saw that. Yeah.
Scott Wilson, Michael Parks, Sue Line, the original Lolita. Hampton, the wonderful writer who wrote Blade Runner. I've worked with a plethora of people over the years, and. Arnold came to me, and Jack recommended me to his Bob Rafelson, who was directing Stay Hungry. I got a call from him. He said, I would like you to work with an actor. I'm doing a film called Stay Hungry. This actor has no training, no background. He's not done anything before this. He did a documentary called Pumping Iron, but that's it. So I met with Arnold, and we worked for 9 weeks on Stay Hungry. And he got the Golden Globe Award for the most promising newcomer that year. So then he came and worked with me for almost a year in classes, and we have become very close friends.
Oh, and
Arnold is significantly more dramatically talented than people know he is because he's decided to go into the action adventure earlier in his career. And it was a choice. He came to me one night and sat in on class and says, Eric, I love the work. I love it. But I'm very physical. I want to do action adventure films. I said, good luck, do it. Why not? But I think he could do King Lear. That may sound funny, but I really believe with a good director, he could do gut-wrenching dramatic material. But I don't think people know that. I do. But anyway, and, Scott Wilson came to me when his name was Bill Wilson, and he was just at the beginning. Do you know who Michael Parks was?
Not off the top of my head.
Really good actor. He did a lot of films. He did a series called Then Came Bronson, and he was a very, very good actor. I never realized the success I think that he deserved. And of course, Harry Dean Stanton with him, and a lot of people that I worked with over the years that are out there and working. Well, Harry Dean is gone, but he lived a long life.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased with the people that I've influenced and who have influenced me. You see, I've learned as much from the people that I've taught as they have from me, and that's the truth.
No doubt. Yeah.
That's the truth. Bottom line. If you said to me, if you could say one word that would epitomize what you feel, what you're feeling, I would give you that word, gratitude. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the blessing of having found this work and having done it and doing it, and the fulfillment that I achieved doing it. Right. And money has never been the motivating factor in my life. Never. I never wrote a book thinking I would make any money or be a bestseller or make a lot of money on it. And I was right. I don't.
Right.
I'm just so happy to be able to do it. I know I don't want to sound like St. Francis. I'm not trying to promote that image, okay? I'm not St. Francis. Make a living at what I do, and I pay my bills. And then we all do that. But the thrust has never been money. I think when anybody starts to do anything with money being their goal, if it's a creative process, I think it's a false approach because it gets in the way of your willingness to do something for nothing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, well, yeah, I think it's a good point. Hey, actors, I've got amazing news. If you want to show your love for this show and all the amazing info we get from our guests, head to actorceo.com/resources to buy your next book on acting, your next piece of self-tape gear, or your next awesome video series like Acting Shakespeare. You're going to make that purchase anyway, and this way you can show a little support for this podcast you love and all the people that make it happen. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I cannot wait to keep delivering great guests and outstanding info on how to treat your career like a business throughout the year. Now back to the show. Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, we do talk about money a lot on the show, but certainly not from the perspective of you're doing this to make money, more just about trying to keep people smart about the money they make in order to allow them to continue their creative endeavors.
We all have to make a living, and of course we want some of the nicer things in life, and I've been blessed. I have a good life. I have a nice house. I drive a nice car. But I'm not hung up. I don't relate to things. Things are secondary for me. Truly,
Bringing up, talking about the people that you've had a chance and opportunity to work with, from high to low, if you will, rather from beginning to certainly seasoned professionals, are coming back to you. I think for a number of reasons, but one of which is certainly if they have to work on, let's say, maybe they have a particularly difficult script they got to work on, or maybe a particularly difficult part in that creative project that they're working on. But even so then you have an opportunity to work with somebody and give them tools and help. These are people who are trained, right? These are people who already have some training, have some experience with themselves in the creative process, and you can help them overcome some of these temporary challenges that they have.
Well,
And
sure.
I see that actors, let's say actors with training, professionals already in the industry going into, say, maybe the audition process or something like that, which is always a harrowing process for anybody at any point in their career.
Sure.
Maybe I wonder if there are some tools, Eric, you can think of that you often use, or maybe you've seen work very well for other actors that help them in those moments just before they go into an audition to help them get to that liberated and free state that you speak so much about. Is there anything that you like to go to?
There is a plethora of preparational exercises that I teach actors.
Uh-huh.
Getting ready to get ready to work, relaxation, sensitizing, personal inventory, which is something I start all my classes with. It's a preliminary preparation. And first of all, going into an audition, actors should do personal inventory. How do I feel? Finding out what's going on, bottom line. If you're tense and anxious and obligated and it really means too much to you and it's getting in your way, then you have to deal with some kind of exercise like selfless involvement, getting out of yourself, perceiving and observing the environment, the people in it, getting totally out of yourself, which lowers your tension and anxiety level. It gets you much more ready to audition. And then you can do ego work, self-esteem work, a progress report, elevate your ego and self-esteem, and let yourself know that you're qualified for this audition, and counting your blessings and your accomplishments. All of those things going into an audition, depending on how personal inventory. How do I feel? Once you find out what's going on, you have a neon arrow pointing at what you have to do as a preparational process to eliminate all the obstacles and blocks for you to be successful in an audition. I teach all this stuff.
Right, sure.
All the thing. Now you said something. People working. Well, when a person comes to me from a different, let's say, a different persuasion, they work with Meisner, or they're doing other things. They worked with Stella Adler.
Right,
and,
absolutely.
And they have different kinds of consciousness, different kinds of tools, etc. I work with them in terms of what they know, what they can do, and creatively manipulate them into using exercises, approaches, techniques that will work for them, not disregarding what they already know, but adding to it, modifying it, adding, supplementing it. So I find out where a person is, and I deal with that reality. And in any way that I can, build on that, I do that. Like I said, you mentioned 300 or 400 exercises. At one time, I had 1,200 exercises. I've cut them down. That's not only instrumental as craft too.
Sure.
Cut them down to about 300 now, because I combined some. I got rid of others that I didn't feel were necessary, et cetera, and so forth. A lot of my exercises and techniques happened when an actor was on stage. He was having some kind of problem, and I would say, okay, try this. And I would suggest something, and he would try it, and it worked. And if it worked for him, I would try it on somebody else, and it worked for him. And pretty soon that exercise became a standard approach with a lot of people, So I would discover a lot of what I do working with actors when they were having difficulty achieving or experiencing or feeling or going in a certain area. I would say, okay, wait a minute, try this. I want you to talk. I want you to do an inner monologue about this and that thing, and now try it. Or I want you to do an imaginary monologue with somebody you love, or whatever they needed. This is just arbitrary suggestions that I'm making. Whatever they need, I would suggest it, and it would work. In most cases, it would work. And so that's how a lot of my exercises came to be. They were born that way, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Out of doing. out of the process of it. It's a living process.
Out of necessity, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, so you've certainly, lastly here, Eric, you've had the pleasure of being able to see this industry grow and change and shift over many years. And I wonder if you've seen the way in which actors approach the craft, if you've seen that change over the years, and if you think now, maybe with more content and more opportunities than ever, that techniques and systems like yours will perhaps become even more valuable to actors.
Well, yeah, I've you brought up something that's really a little painful for me, actually. You say things change. When I first started teaching, classes would go to 2:30 in the morning. People would jump up on stage filled with energy and excitement at 2 in the morning,
Right.
And there was a commitment to acting and creativity and process that no longer seems to exist in this younger group of people, this younger generation.
Yeah, that's partly why I asked the question.
I find that most young actors who come into town are more interested in booking a job than they are in being prepared to do the job, And so it's like self-taping and finding an agent and marketing and doing audition classes, which I'm not against. I'm not against that because they can be technically helpful.
Right.
But they're more interested in booking a job, even though they're not trained or capable of fulfilling that on an organic, experiential level. And I have found that to become more and more the reality than it used to be. Now, the actors who end up taking my classes, I allow everybody to take a free audit, a complimentary audit to my class. Fantastic. I want them to see what I'm doing. It gives them a chance to look me over, the work over, and me a chance to look them over, okay? Mm-hmm. There's no charge for it. They sit in and they think. But, I would say that maybe 25 or 30% of the people who audit my class end up taking the class. The other 40, 60, 35, 50% don't take the class because it begins to be too demanding, too much work. Mm-hmm. They want to work as an actor. They want to get a job. They don't really think they need to do this kind of work to be an actor and work.
Right. You're teaching sailing and they're more worried about the paint color on the boat. And,
right. That's
getting people on board, but they don't know how to sail the ship.
No, and they have no idea, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to me, and I feel sorry for them because they don't last. They don't last.
Yeah.
Most of them say goodbye and they go home.
Well, if I may, having spoken to a number of industry professionals myself over these years doing the show, I think I'm perhaps overly optimistic about this, but I see that the industry has a unique opportunity in front of it. There's a lot more creative opportunities. More actors are being employed now than I think ever in the history of our career, which is good. Does that mean that there are a lot more people who see an opportunity to come in and maybe don't feel like doing the work to really develop a craft because these jobs just keep coming up and popping up? Perhaps, yes. But I think in the long run, I think not only will there be more opportunity, but because there becomes so much competition with all of these different entertainment content creators, that good content will really start to rise and the demand for good content will really start to rise, which then good content relies on good creators, good writers, good directors, good actors.
Absolutely.
And so I feel that, folks like yourself and your system and others who are really out there committed to developing good actors will once again start to rise in terms of their value to the community as they were, perhaps years ago and, in the golden age, if you will, in big quotes here.
You know something? I hope you're right. I'm looking forward to that. However long, much longer I'm going to be on this planet, I would love to really experience that because that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it certainly fills my heart thinking about it that way. And, talking with you, Eric, has absolutely filled my heart and my creative soul as well. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experience and your insight. It's been a pleasure.
Well, you are incredibly articulate, and it was my pleasure.
Thank you. You can find all the resources for this episode in the show notes at actorceo.com/110.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the Actor CEO podcast on iTunes and at actorceo.com.